Hey, Glenn here, Monster Guitars, and after some time I am again looking at the second coffin guitar, the second Pall. And that's the name that I've settled on for this model, the Pall. What would I call this one? The striped Pall? I don't know, but it's another one. And since the time that I've started this guitar, and previously, I've obviously been working on several other guitars, and something that I've noticed in those guitars, so for example on the Flame in Fur, I noticed it in particular and did something about it by putting something on the back of the neck, because the thing that I've noticed is that I have a tendency to cut my neck pockets a little bit deeper than is necessary, and possibly deeper than is helpful by just a couple of millimeters. So what I have done here is I have put a shim into the pocket, and I've glued that in, so it's now part of the guitar. And that's a piece of Douglas fir, but of course you won't see the stripiness of the Douglas fir when this guitar is done, because, well, there'll be a neck in there. So now I've got what looks like a really good height. Let me show you what I mean. There won't be a neck break angle on this because it's not a particularly tall bridge like a Tunematic, but you can just kind of see there that at maximum height there's going to be, well, at maximum height there's going to be a fairly high action, but that's what you want at maximum height, I suppose. But you certainly wouldn't have wanted the highest action to be any higher than that. That's, I don't know, that's maybe 4 millimeters there. And I can't imagine ever wanting a higher action than that. So you imagine, had I not shimmed this, it would have just been too high. And I've tended to err unintentionally on the side of having actions that are too high. And, you know, people talk about the virtue of a low action for a reason. It's just nicer to play. I'm thinking what I'm going to do for this guitar, and this is something that I typically see with bass guitars, but not so much electric guitars, and I don't really know why. But rather than have a jack plate on the side, which I could do, but I'm not going to. I'm going to have a socket right there on the front and have the plug going in. The only issue with that currently is that the cavity isn't deep enough. I don't need the whole cavity to be that deep, but I do need at least one spot over here to be deep enough for the plug to go in. And there we go. So there's just one part of the compartment that is now a little bit deeper. So I'm just sitting some parts on here to get an idea of how things are going to look. I've pretty much decided on all the hardware. It's going to be quite skull oriented. There are some skull tuners that you'll see shortly wrapped up there. If you haven't seen them already, I forget what I've shown you. Skull knobs. I think the gold on the pearl looks good. The guitar won't be quite this color because I'm going to be oiling it, so it'll be darker. One thing I noticed, I mean, I already realized it, but it became more apparent when sitting the pickup ring there, is that the neck, I suppose you could call that the tenon of the neck, the part of the neck that sits in the body, sits a little bit proud of the surface of the body. And I have an idea on what might be the best way to fix that. Just a moment. So I don't want to take this down by much, so I'm going to be very careful. What I'll do first of all is, using the Shinto saw rasp, get one section of it down to where I want it to be as a guide for the rest. Might be the best way. It's a good position. Okay, I'll sit this back in the body and see how we're doing. is now low enough that I wouldn't want to use the saw rasp on that anymore. Oops, of course this stuff isn't attached, is it? So if I can get the whole thing down to that level, then I can do the rest when I give the top a final sand. Yeah, that's what I think I'll do. And as is my habit, just because I find it really effective, once I've glued the neck in, I think I will put in some epoxy resin to fill the cracks that you can see on the top there before the final sand. It'll still be visible in the final sand, but it'll probably look quite nice. I've done it on another instrument. Okay, now I'm going to take the neck out again and file the rest down to where that is. So this is a pretty handy device, jig, template, call it what you will. One of the things that I was going to say I don't do well, but actually a lot of people don't do it well, and they are looking for creative ways to do it more perfectly, is the spacing of the drilling on the back for the string ferrules to go through the body. I bought this nifty template on eBay. It's pretty thick. It's aluminium or aluminum, and I've just used it with my drill, and it looks pretty perfect to me, I have to say. Now it turns out that the holes that this comes with are great for standard ferrules, but they're not good for what I'm using here, which is a plate. The holes need to be ever so slightly larger, but that'll be easy now that I've got the initial holes there. Right. As I think I said earlier, most ferrules are smaller than these ones. I forget what most ferrules tend to be. It's either 6 or 7 millimeters. Don't quote me. If you've got some, measure them before you go drilling, obviously. These required, where's the bit that's still in the drill? 8.5 millimeters. And they fit nice and snugly. I don't actually think it matters which way you sit the plate. It's purely a matter of aesthetic choice, but that fits in there perfectly. I can get it out, but not with one hand. Okay, on with the show. I'm putting some shielding on the back of the control plate onto which the controls will be attached. I'm using, as I have done in the past, copper tape, which seems to me to do a perfectly acceptable job. The point of shielding, of course, is so that, well, it's kind of like I'm putting walls and ceiling and a floor of conductive material around all the controls. So it's like they are protected inside a box from any external interference. And there's always going to be some, even in this room, there's going to be some interference. So my guitar will be less affected by it because of the shielding. You'll notice that it doesn't go all the way to the edges, but it doesn't actually matter. The edges go well past the actual cavity. The walls of the cavity, which will have tape all the way up to the top, will come to about there. So it will form a complete box. Right, now to tape up the inside, this is going to be a bit more fiddly, but let's go. It's time to put some finish on this guitar, and I've decided to use Odie's oil. I've used it on a table actually, and the results were really good, and I know that it's fairly popular as a guitar finish. Just a moment. This is what I'll be applying it with, an abrasive pad. In this case it's synthetic steel wool. And you need very little of this stuff. It goes quite far. You just rub it right into the wood. It doesn't darken things very much, but like any oil, it does darken things. I don't know if you saw how much I put on there, but it was such a small amount And this will be actually more than I need. I didn't need to use quite that much for the whole top and sides. It's something you can apply a second coat of if the wood sucks up a fair bit of it, but it probably won't. A little bit goes so far, I find. Well, the Pall Mark II, what am I going to call it? How am I going to name my models? Because it's based on the Pall. I guess it's just the Pall in stripes, whereas this is, I don't know. Anyway, it's hanging out with his older brother. I have to say, I think I personally might prefer the first one. It looks darker, more like an actual coffin. Perhaps a bit more sinister. Yeah, I like it. I mean, this is nice though, don't get me wrong. Now, you'll see the original one has some handles on the side. I'm currently looking for some suitable handles, maybe that color or maybe gold to match the rest of the hardware. I'm still thinking about that. I've ordered the string trees. They will arrive before too long. And I'm just making sure that I'm on top of the electronics. I may have done it right, but it's not standard. That's not volume, tone, or volume, tone. There's only one pickup, so why would I have 3 knobs? Well, I'll explain that in the next video when I've got everything, and I'll give it a demo then, and that'll be that, so stay tuned.